I know that if I say I don't know where to begin, it doesn't tend to inspire confidence in what's to follow. But the reality is that I don't know where to begin, not because I don't know where to begin, but because I don't know where to end. And I don't mean that as a matter of time. There's a clock. I see the clock. I can't see it, read it, but I'll interpret it. I can see it. You don't need to fear. I'll tell you what I mean by not knowing where to begin or not knowing where to end by way of a story, because sometimes stories bring out the child's ears in all of us, the storyteller and the hearer. And the story is one that I've told many times. Probably nearly everybody in every row knows this story. It's Henry Nouwen's story about twins in the womb, not yet born, a brother and a sister. And they share their parents' womb, their mother's womb, that perfect, complete world. And in there, the sister says to the brother, I believe in life after birth. He probably laughed as well. He says, life after birth, that's nonsense. Where do you come up with this from? And she says, well, I'm going to tell you something else that I believe that you probably aren't going to believe either, which is that I believe that there is a mother. I believe. And the brother looks at her like she's foolish. He says, a mother, life after birth, where do you come up with this nonsense from? And at the end of the day, what you realize in this story is the brother turns away hoping that his sister will eventually just leave him alone. But what I want to do is take you past that story, past where Henry Nouwen put the final period and the end, to a beautiful and wise tale. And let's roll the tape forward. Let's find those two children and realize what happened next. When they came into this world, when they lay on their mother's chest in a well-lit hospital room for a moment and thought that that was the new world, like Columbus. And then after hours or days, depending on their health care plan, they were ushered out of that room. And they entered hallways, and suddenly their world expanded. And then they entered elevators, and their world took on new shapes and movement and design. And then they entered a street and cars, and they came to home. And suddenly the world kept changing shape, kept expanding. Those kids understood Einstein's theories. They understood quantum physics. They understood the idea of an expanding universe more than I can, because it was happening before their new eyes. The world was constantly growing, reshaping itself, expanding, transforming, changing. Now imagine then that those two children were ushered to a park, and suddenly that became part of their world. And then to a town and a city, and maybe through a school trip to a state or even a country. And then imagine that a few weeks ago I took 5 airplanes because I, like you, was one of those infants in one world and then another and then another and then another, not believing that the world kept growing. But I took 5 flights. It was about 30-some hours to arrive in the north of India. And my world grew. It expanded. It changed. Because the world that was my home expanded to towns and cities and states and countries. And now I was across the world meeting people who spoke a different language and ate different foods, but they were still part of this beautiful world. What happens is we tend to lose our amazement until we see something new and fresh like a baby does. Suddenly, like the baby, we see the hospital room or a new country or a new person. We experience something for the first time with awe, with what Heschel called radical amazement. But how quickly our eyes dim to the radical and the amazing when we see something once or twice, and then we see and realize that we've seen it before, so it isn't quite as extraordinary. But our tradition, rabbis teaching us 100 prayers to say in a single day, was because what they wanted to inculcate in us was this extraordinary gratitude. Not a basic and simple gratitude, but an extraordinary awareness of blessing. They wanted everyone to be post-surgery. They wanted everyone to be coming out of a hospital with a tag on their arm that said, this is life. This is the world. Now see it as if for the first time. Now when I got to India, one of the things that I realized was that life is extraordinarily same and different. And what I mean by the same is people share values and they share experiences and they share needs. There was a woman who came into our room whenever we were davening, 17 rabbis sent from America to work in India. And every morning we would sing Oziv Zimrat, those words that the kids sang at the beginning of the service, that the choir sang. I heard that for the first time in India. Hearing a Hebrew song in India, not from them, but from us, because I was in a delegation of 17 rabbis pulled from all over the country because, presumably not for our handyman skills. Presumably. In my case. I don't think Ruth Messenger, the head and president of American Jewish World Service, read my resume, looked at my walls and my home projects and said, that's the man I need in India. But what we did every single day in India was work with our hands. Every day, we toiled in the heat, in humidity, high heat and humidity. We'd go out with shovels, with pickaxes, with metal pans to mix cement, to break floors, to lay new floors, to build paths, to go to water to wash ourselves at a pump because there was no clean water in the village of Bukhari Purwa where we were stationed. Every day we went to a village that didn't have electricity, but it had smiles because the opposite of poverty isn't happiness. It had gratitude because people were alive just as we are to the miracles of every day. And it had discord because every single human being that meets life meets it sometimes with discord and challenge and opposition. And every day we toiled, and every night we would do our laundry in the sink, and believe me, the next day it wasn't that clean. I had white shirts that were never white again. My hand washing left something to be desired. But every day I'd put those clothes on, speed dried in the heat on the roof outside my room. And every morning, again, we would toil for these people, trying to build, trying to improve a small, very simple school in their small, very simple village where nobody had shoes, where there were cows everywhere, where the children walked barefoot with huge smiles, and one little girl called Goldie pulled me by the hand without words that we understood, but she took me around the corner, past cows, past people, and pointed to a mud hut with such pride that said, "This is my home." And I went inside the hut with her. She pulled me in, presumably to show me her house, like I might my Beverly Hills mansion. She took me in. There weren't windows or doors. There were dogs outside, not as pets, but as an alarm system. Because they don't have doors. They don't have locks. They don't have metal in their world. But what they had were thick walls of clay that they had built and thatched roofs to cover themselves. And I came inside, and there was a small man squatting with a bowl, a metal bowl with rice in it, and something that looked like dal, lentils, covered in flies. And he looked up at me with a few teeth in his mouth, and he raised his bowl to share it with me. And then I realized that there's something human about being human. And then I realized that no matter what our culture is, when we find ourselves here and not here, we realize what binds us to one another, that we live in this same world. One of the things that I realized that I can't take out of my mind and memory is the girls. That I learned that girls at birth in many of these villages are placed in clay basins and covered to suffocate, and then placed in the rivers to die. And what I learned in this village was that girls go uneducated. And what I learned in this village is that despite laws that prohibit child marriage, so many girls are married before puberty. And what I learned in this village was that when you drink water from a cup or from a bottle, you never put your mouth to it because there's always the assumption that you're going to share it with somebody else. And what I learned in this village was that girls grow up to be women who always will be in the shade of men, never coming out of their houses without men, never wandering into town without men. And what I realized is that my daughter is being raised as a girl in this same moment, in this very same world that expanded to show me itself as I traveled through it. And what I realized, like Alice in the Looking Glass, is that I can't unsee what I've seen. And I can't unknow what I know. And what I realize is I am accountable to her. Because one day she might say, "You went there and you saw that, Dad, but you did nothing?" You see, every one of us is going to write a memoir, either in ink or in the imprint of our lives, hands and our works. And either mine can be Bearing Witness, as its title, or it can be Taking Action. And the choice that I want to make, that I hope we'll make, rather than simply bearing witness, which is amoral, is to take action, which enters us into the world of morality. In the Torah, which is known for its economy of language, of words and letters. Everyone counts. Nothing seems to be there extemporaneously or extraneously. 36 times, not once. 36 times it says, you shall not oppress the stranger because you were once a stranger. The Torah teaches us to love and to care for the widow, the orphan, the stranger. And the reason is because they've lost their natural assumed protectors. So they look to us. And even if they don't look to us, that's what we realize as a Jewish people is our imperative. We say tikkun olam means in our zip code to make change, but tikkun olam in God's eyes is an olam that's much larger than a zip code and a sight line. It's a world. So you and I might say, but how can we possibly do enough across the world when there's so much to do in this world? And what I would say is we have two hands. One should be stretched and one should be held close. And the one that's held close should be to find the people and the need, the outreach that every one of us can do for each other in this community and around this community in line of our sight. But there's another stretched hand that can join with other hands that are already reaching across the globe to make the world of God's vision. You see, what we say is, letaken olam b'malchut Shaddai. And what that little phrase means, to Kabbalists and to any Jews that understand it, is to repair the world for the sake of God's place in it. Think about that as a concept. That our task isn't simply to leave the world without the imprint of our presence, to leave quietly. Our task is to leave with the presence and the imprint of our presence on the world, that we realize our imperative as Jewish individuals and a community to change the world for the better. There's a beautiful commentary on the Exodus from the book of Exodus by Emmanuel Levinas. And I want to read a few words from his writing to you, because for me, he explained to me what my discomforting compulsion is about in Jewish terms. He said, imagining himself as a slave in Egypt, the trauma that I experienced as a slave in the land of Egypt constitutes my humanity itself. This immediately brings me closer to the problems of the damned on the earth, of all those who are persecuted. I wonder, when we consider ourselves as grown children in this world that demands maturity, if we can widen our lens. If we, as a synagogue, can look to the vision and the example of this church and realize that they serve people not only here, but go outside and touch that screen and you'll realize the map. You'll realize that they're all over the world, not because they're so great in numbers, they are, but because they're so great in purpose and vision. We can do that. You see, American Jewish World Service is one of these organizations that takes Jewish values and places them in the oddest places across the world. Ruth Messenger, the head of AJWS, tells a beautiful story about last summer in Ghana, in East Africa. And in Ghana, there was a man called Josh, one of the volunteers, and he was walking in one of the fields toward the end of the summer, and one of the Ghanaian farmers saw him and called to him, and Josh came over. And the man asked him, are you one of the Jewish people that's been volunteering? Josh said, yes. Why do you ask? And he said, because I've been watching you and I realized that I'm also Jewish. And Josh looked at this black African man from Ghana and he said, really? He said, yes, because I also want to make the world better. So imagine the example that we can set for one another. Imagine what we can do as a community and as for people. As people and for people, with one another. It may be that every one of us listens to a sermon like this and says, so you went to India, but you're not expecting 1,500 of us to go. It may be that you listen to this and say, how can I possibly take on a task that's that big when I'm trying to just decipher and work out my little world of one zip code, one address, one home, one bill, one mortgage payment, and maybe a couple of kids or grandkids. But what the rabbis say is also wise and insightful. They say the responsibility is not to complete the task. Neither can you desist from beginning it. What they say is, don't be overwhelmed. You don't have that right. Don't be overwhelmed by need. You don't have that luxury. Look to the world in which you live as a Jewish person in this new year, 5,774, that began only hours ago, and realize that your hand can stretch or be held tight. That your hand can be used to grasp and pull and cling, or to give and share and comfort and strengthen. You see, I often think about the Magen David, the Star of David that I wear on my chest. I'm not a jewelry man. No toe rings, no nose rings. I wear two things. I wear a wedding band because that's what I stand for. That means something more than jewelry to me. That means people and relationships and obligations. And at the same time, I look to the star on my chest that I got when my son became a bar mitzvah in Jerusalem. And I wear that, A, because it's beautiful, but B, because it says that I'm an ambassador for a people. That when I go to the deli wearing that star, it makes me think about how I treat the waitress when she makes a mistake. When I go to the gas station, when I meet you, whoever I meet in this world, when I wear that, it says to me, hold yourself to that standard. But at the same time, I think about a star of a king that's been dead for millennia, and I ask myself if it's really the most relevant image that we need to motivate ourselves to do something important Jewishly in the world. And I think maybe our logo, our mantra, our image might need to change. Instead of being David's shield, our hands. Maybe the image of the future, of our future, is a hand. Realizing it isn't enough to be simply a Jewish brain thinking and deciphering and going over Torah and Talmud and accounting and physics and all that we've been known to do for centuries, but at the same time to realize that we need to do in this world. That the infants that were born, God willing, with 2 arms and 2 hands and 2 eyes and a heart that connects to a mind need to do something with all of those elements to make life extraordinary. To make a memoir not merely of what we see, but a memoir and a legacy of what we do. A few weeks ago, I called 15 people, including Judy Gaffin, the head of our mitzvah program at the synagogue. And I picked people that I knew were passionate about mitzvah, about outreach, about what our middle name is and can be. And what I said to them in my office that night was, I'm calling you together because I want us to think about what that O in VOS stands for. What else it could stand for. How enlarged it could become year to year. I'd like our audit every year of outreach to always be deficient. That every year at the end of a year we say we didn't do enough, and every year at the beginning of a year we say we'll do more. That as a community we'll be more generous, not only with our wallets, but that too. But with our hands, with our mouths, with our embraces, with our compassion, with the efforts that we can make for people. Realize how many you are. Realize the impact that you, only in this room, can have. Realize what a synagogue can mean in the world if it becomes the state of the art, the state of how outreach is done. You see, I'd love that. I'd love us to share that as our pride, as our legacy, as VOS. Not simply that we sing and we pray together, we share experiences, but that we do and we build together and we strengthen. You see, I became a rabbi a few weeks ago, and in that moment I had to think to myself, what needs to change in me? As I do every time I close my eyes to say Shema, and every time I wake up to do my work. Something has to change, because yesterday certainly wasn't enough. Because today we'll have new demands. And I say this not as a grandiose statement, but because what I want to do with my children and myself is always be trying to strive, to be a people that's trying as a family and as this family to do more. Letaken olam b'malchut Shaddai. To repair this world. That was given to us, as the Kabbalists tell us, in tiny fragments, in shards of beautiful godliness. So that your task and mine, in this lifetime, in this age of our lives, with our abilities, our individual capacities, is to gather the dust of those holy sparks and to bring it back together to create that holy vessel again. Not to be overwhelmed by it. Not to say it's cracked, therefore it needs to remain so. Not to say someone else can do it, but instead to realize that we came here because meaning has meaning to us. Because we came here because we're striving people by definition. Otherwise, why open a book? We could have done something else tonight. Because we came here to grow in every age of life, to grow within ourselves. And I can't think of a greater way to grow within ourselves than to extend ourselves to others, to find what it is to realize ourselves in other people's lives, to fill that truck tomorrow, and then again on Yom Kippur, to feed the poor in this city, and that number grows and grows. And those people look just like your children and grandchildren. To join together as a community in the next year to do things that matter for one another and with one another for others. And maybe even to reach a girl in India so that we can say to her, and I can say to my daughter, that the experience wasn't simply to see, but it was to be touched by what I saw and to do something about it together. Shana Tova.